A very good afternoon to everyone. I'll talk about my experiences. I tried to compress some 60 slides into whatever I could, but I failed miserably. So I created one slide probably which will summarize what I'm trying to say. um, so I work largely in the area of data efficient learning and have applied it to varied domains. When I say data, I mean data and compute efficient. How to learn in resource constrained environments. No matter what you get, H100, and earlier there was A100, and even before that we had A6000, and long ago we had, probably you are aware of this entire scale of GPUs, right? And I have a whole bunch of these 1080s and 2080s sitting unutilized in my lab. So what I realized over time is this atrocious scale at which we are actually becoming compute hungry is not sustainable. Obviously, beyond the carbon footprint, the issue is also that we are burning money. So that's when we also put out so many industry interactions that resulted in distilling out all of our learnings into an open source platform called Decile, decile.org. It's completely open source. It's available under MIT version 6 license, which means you can use it for commercial purposes. We want to really encourage research and development around it. So I kind of talk a little bit about that. I also talk about my experiences from the Koita Center for Digital Health and a little bit of Bharat GPT. So the main lessons for me are what our industry is good at, shorter horizon for problems and solutions. So they keep coming with me. Okay, data efficiency, compute efficiency, training models with in a way that there is fusional learning. How can I do fused learning between speech and text modalities? So they come with shorter horizons, but then I think the academia is good, and also responsibility morally is to convert that into longer horizon for problems and solutions, and also put out things which will draw the attention of companies that will come in the future for shorter horizons for problems and solutions, right? So this is strength. I don't view these as weaknesses. Both of them have their strength. Opportunities for exposure to end use cases. Actually, I'm very happy that several of the companies that have even resulted from some of the products we have built have hired our own students, right? So why? Because, well, they see some very tangible problem they can solve. But then we obviously groom them. What did we groom them? We groomed them in opportunities for exposure to solution alternatives. Because we have a longer horizon, we can also look at alternatives. And that's when we can actually explore compute efficiency rather than just trying to release the next model. The third, what industries are good at is market research and pulse, right? So you can have a very long horizon, but then if you're not catering to the market research, immediately you become irrelevant. Whereas we can keep doing technological and state-of-the-art advancement. Believe me, every time you think of the most important problems are solved, new problems emerge, right? And it'll be actually a folly to think that there is no need for the longer drawn problems. Fourth thing that good industries are good at is closing the loop in solutioning and service. Right? I remember the Navy, when we deployed our video analytics solution there, they were behind us. They said, can you please give annual maintenance contracts? I said, how the hell do we give AMCs? We deployed the solution. So we can't do that, right? But we can close the loop in benchmarking. So when NCRB comes and says, oh, you have good face recognition models, what is accuracy? We can do benchmarking. Industry has no bandwidth to do benchmarking. Benchmarking, also providing recipes that can be replicated. Finally, what I've seen is institutions have great memory, but their memory is distributed. There's a CXO, there's a director. Academics, unfortunately, doesn't have that distributed memory, but we have very localized institutional memory, which also has an advantage. There's a prof sitting out there who probably has all these experiences, and that's why some of us are being called to speak here, right? The good thing is, obviously, we can get rid of a lot of the overhead in the memory that is across CXOs and directors are all ever changing. But the challenge here is, of course, we find it very difficult to manage. So somehow we need to bring the strengths of the two. This is my bird's eye view. Now, specifically with respect to deep learning, it's undeniable that personalization, autonomous vehicles, all of them have seen the advantage of deep learning. But the big challenge through all my experiences is fragility to biases or imperfections in the data. right? You have ChatGPT, but then there is bias towards Indian languages, or the cost of progress is compute expense. So compute costs in AI and data sets, both of them are actually quite massive, right? Annotation costs and learning costs. So this is where we kept analyzing from across multiple interactions. What are the learnings? How can we be efficient in data preparation, in model training, in model validation, and finally model deployment? So can we train models under these constraints, right? Labeling bottleneck, training time bottleneck, and distribution shift, train and test time distribution shift, without sacrificing on accuracy? This is where industry is very stern. Actually, even publications are stern on this. They don't want accuracy compromise. Right? What is the point in saying I'm very efficient, but 20% less accurate? Nobody wants it. So both industry and academia, and research publications give you that that barometer. So we saw that, a lot of research has happened in these spaces. Industries do ad hoc solutions, but there was no code, no good toolkits or benchmarks. And that's when we put together this open source platform called Decile. And it has these 5 different components. Very quickly, I'll run through how different industry use cases actually helped us build into different models here, and there's a lot more to be done. Okay, so one of the core ideas behind Decile is this summarization. You have large data sets. A subset of the data is probably as good as the data. All of you had your lunch, and you know that the sweet that you had, the dessert, the third serving is probably not as effective as a first serving. Right? There's always diminishing returns. Data set has diminishing return. Model parameters have diminishing returns. Sizes have model architecture size have diminishing returns. Okay, so there's this very large class of functions called submodular functions which exhibit this, but there are other functions which are nearly submodular. And maximizing these, basically, if I want to fit a bunch of bulbs in this room, I want to fit those bulbs in such a way that the illumination is maximized. But obviously, I also want to reduce on the cost. So how do I fit those bulbs so that it's representative of the density of people sitting in different regions in this room? So that's exactly the problem of submodular maximization. You can think of people here as data points and the bulbs being fitted as the points that are actually selected and so on. So from a subset selection point of view, you can select a subset of labeled data to reduce training time, subset of unlabeled data to reduce labeling cost, and you can continue this fill in the blank exercise for other permutations as well. And you can also have other variants of, say, data subset selection where you have query focused or privacy preserving. This is very important. I want a subset of the data that doesn't reveal information about people. So here's a data, and here's a subset which is only cars because the query was people. I don't want to reveal information about people, which is very important. I'll now begin with some examples for every module here. So this is an interaction we had with Adobe Research. And I'll name them out because they're all public publications around all of those. So this was actually our first exercise in building a foundational model, a language model. And the goal was obvious. Adobe had been working very hard to build foundational model, and their goal was to make this possible in less time, which resonated very well with my interest. And thankfully, all of this was meant to be open source. Because of course, also to bolster their own internal research, which I'm very happy about. And again, we found that the key idea here was a very nice combination of research and engineering. Research is obviously about finding subset of the data, but engineering was how do you batch the data so that these batches in themselves are worthy being subsetted, right? So this is random partitioning to handle scale, and then we found that sampling is essential for the language model to see diverse samples during training. And there are lots of interesting lessons around the way, right? If you're looking at how instances are similar, at what level in a deep network should you compute similarity between instances? Obviously, a lot of the time should not be spent just computing similarity. So you may want to compute similarity based on some of the earlier layers, right? But are the early layers good enough, representative enough of the similarity? So again, a lot of engineering. This is where Adobe brought its engineering. We brought in our optimization techniques, right? And some very interesting insights, right? Syntactic information is most prominent in the middle layers of BERT, which is, a transformer-based model, a deep model. And semantics is spread across the entire model. This is a very interesting insight we got. Had most success reconstructing syntactic tree depth from middle layers and best subject-verb agreement around layers 8 to 9. Okay, very nice experience in actual efficient learning. So I'm going to skip some of this. Another example, this was with IBM Research. This was very related to our work on healthcare. And the goal here was to be able to come up with very accurate prescriptions, right? Recommendations based on the patient input, right? So imagine that there's a question about the patient history and symptoms and current problems. This joint work with my colleague, Professor Kshitij. And the idea was to be able to reason out and inform the interns or possibly the doctor of what in the symptom is triggering what reasoning or what diagnosis, right? So there was a combination of forward and backward, lightweight models using our own chain of thought reasoning, etc., which is a detail. So we call it eliminative backward-forward approach. This is again a very interesting use case where you take mixture of models. Don't take one model, take mixture, right? And the good thing here is we actually have a very nice model which is going to be hosted by the Maharashtra University of, hosted for the Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, MUHS, by our sponsor Koita Foundation. Mr. Rizwan Koita has offered. The entire research was done with IBM Research. So now you see so many partners coming together. IBM Research obviously gets its traction, but we are benefiting the interns and we are making them AI savvy, right? Because they will actually play with the system. They'll get case studies, and instead of having a very narrow horizon, their horizon gets broadened when they actually are studying through AI. Of course, we have a large number of partners. Good thing is through this, we have already been interacting with many tangible end use cases. Department of Public Grievances and Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, GST, and so on. There are lots of banks, Gupshup, many have expressed interest. And we call this a broad ecosystem because there are companies who engage with us not necessarily by contributing to Bharat GPT, but we are actually building our capability, just like with IBM Research and Adobe. It's very important to laterally build that capability. And yeah, some of you would have probably read about the Hanuman models that have been recently out there. Now, in this space, again, what we realized with Google is Google actually is big time, interested in making sure that these models are very effective and personalized, right? So you want these large language models personalized. But the problem is, of course, that you can't have data shared across nodes or clusters if you want them to be personalized. If I want my interactions to be captured without peeking into others' data, yet benefiting from others' data, how can you do that? There's this big area called federated learning. And the entire area of federated learning was brought about by Google. And we've had very nice collaborations with them. But what also has resulted is good papers in top conferences. So, they're listed out there. What you can see, one of the outcomes of this work is, while some of these don't necessarily, we don't publish about large language models in public fora. What we do publish is our learnings on non-large language models. So that is another mode of engagement. Because Google is very, very, they're particular. They don't want their learnings to be shared on large language model front. But they're fine that the learnings on these run-of-the-mill deep learning problems are shared. So that's another mode of engagement. And we perfectly respect that. Another very interesting journey which has to do with video surveillance analytics. We work with a company, Srivisify, and this was largely through our National Center of Excellence in Technology of Internal Services. The center doesn't function its full capacity, but the company does, which is good, right? So having a company with a life beyond the center is actually very heartening for us. We brought out several products there with several projects under operation, and we're very happy that we won the national awards for e-governance and also Dr. P.K. Patwardhan Award, and very recently also won. We've actually also run some big bids. So I'll give you one example from this entire engagement. While we have real-time alerts, compliance, and quality monitoring, one of the very challenging problems was crowd counting. So imagine, you have your system, the video surveillance AI system deployed at Naval Dockyard, Visakhapatnam. And any of you have seen, right, the casual labor entering and exiting every day. It's like the 500s. Now, when we deploy standard off-the-shelf crowd counting model, it goes bonkers. A crowd of 500 at one time will be predicted to be 50. At next moment, it will be 1,000. That's how much the variance is. Why? Because these models were trained on Chinese and American data sets, which haven't seen Naval Dockyard Visakhapatnam kind of crowd, right? So that's when research matters. Things don't work off the shelf. Because these models, they are trained in a one-size-fits-all manner. So what we did, we said, well, instead of having one standard model, we can have a mixture of models, right? In case you've heard of Mixtral does that. It's a large language model, mixture of models. But here it's very nuanced. What we also did is not just a naive mixture of models. We partitioned, created a likelihood function, which is, the partitioning process is sensitized to the likelihood function. The likelihood function works closely with respect to the partitioning function. The important thing is that our variance is reduced significantly, right? And unfortunately, we are not able to produce better accuracies. And many papers are just producing better accuracies. Why? Because while they may do well for crowd ranges of 20 to 100, they go bonkers when it's 500. We say, no, we want to do well in general. So so this may not be most attractive to all the conferences, but we managed to get our papers published at top venues. This is a challenge. When we work in industry, we sometimes have to face the reviewer heat because reviewers don't understand the language that industry understands. Gradually, we got a lot more publications in this space. Coming back to the same video, I mean, we also have another model called, another component of Decile called targeted subset selection. And take the same naval dockyard use case. Imagine I want to do anomaly detection in some of those ports, right, the harbors. Right? If I need to train my model for naval dockyard, they have to share the data with me, which is a strict no-no. But what we can do is, this allows them to give our API a query. What is the query that target? They identify from their video feeds a subset of frames, which is a target setting. They don't have to share it with us. And our model goes and identifies a whole bunch of either labeled training data sets from a large or published literature, or a targeted subset from their own feeds, which they can annotate if they have the time and bandwidth. We give them options. And they're happy annotating, or they're happy selecting from a subset of the large labeled data set, but they have a model which is localized. Again, this cannot come without industry interaction. And the goal was basically to make these confusion matrices, which are typically very, diagonally, which are meant to be diagonally heavy. They are not diagonally heavy, right? So how do you bring them diagonally heavy? So this is targeted subset selection. Used for speech recognition as well, right? This is a use case in speech recognition. This actually won us an Amazon Research Award. Amazon was interested in this Alexa, where it had to do very well in very neglected dialects, right? So if imagine a Manipuri person speaking English, how do you do well? Well, you can bootstrap around Assamese speakers of English. You don't have, even if you don't have Manipuri speakers of English. That was a basic, but as I said, a lot of the work is now open sourced. As part of the Koita Center of Digital Health, many other use cases of this targeted selection, whether it's aligning with in distribution, avoiding out of distribution when it comes to histopathological images, right? If you know that histopathological images, there are stains. The stains change from one hospital to another. What AIIMS Bhopal does and what AIIMS Delhi does, there are subtle differences. But models can be quickly customized. I think I'm running out of time. And the goal in all of these is, this is from retinopathy data. And the goal is that you're trying to find this needle in a haystack. And the needle is, unfortunately, in the tail, right? But how do you boost the tail so that the needle becomes big and distinguishes itself from that haystack? So this is imbalanced medical data, being able to do in distribution versus out of distribution. A very interesting use case on Hodgkin lymphoma of our engagement with Tata Memorial Hospital. Again, I'll give, in the context of another module called SPEAR, semi-supervised data programming, I'll give one more example, right? So at Tata Memorial, what was the use case? The use case is cell counting. So if I have to do cell counting, and if I have to train a deep learning model or even a segment anything model, it's going to take a lot of data. But what's possible? We can actually ask the domain expert to write simple programs or rules. This is how a cell looks like. Actually, it's a no-brainer for them, but it saves so much space for us. So we should not be only thinking of large language models and large learning. Sometimes small learning helps if you actually capture the domain expertise, right? And so obviously, we don't treat the programs as the rules as binding. These rules are actually used in a probabilistic setting in a whole bunch of papers we have published, where we do what we call semi-supervised data programming, reducing labeling efforts using data programming and subset selection. So it's very nice use cases from Tata Memorial. We also had very good success with Narayana Health. This was work with Dr. Devi Shetty himself. where the goal was extracting data from medical records. Again, the standard thought process is, if I have to extract data from medical records, I need to label. How many? Thousands of them. We thought very differently. Because we work closely with the healthcare partner, we realized that most of these medical records, they have the field of interest in some specific region in the image. They can easily write rules. Rules are what? Bounding boxes and key value pairs. Very easy to write. The person writes 5 images are sufficient to learn a robust model. Right? And your format changes, just write the rules again. So, new problems, and this work is of course published. There's a lot more. We extended all this to handwritten as well, not just printed. You can see on the right hand side, handwritten. Again, it's published. Similar kind of high fidelity. All this is high fidelity extraction. So we also did this high fidelity speech text alignment. This was a case study with basically with the Bihar government. They had household surveys, plenty of household surveys. Goal was to create structured records out of the household surveys. And there are some few key value pairs. That's all they had to extract. Again, this high fidelity extraction came to the rescue. And we're very happy to announce that we have we are co-leading with JIPMER, a Center of Excellence in AI for Healthcare, bootstrapping around all of this work, both extraction, digitization into EMRs, EHRs, and summarizing them. Fortunately, we have lots of partners. We had our 45 partners, but JIPMER brought in 38 partners. We're sitting on a mountain of partners, several of them industry, Google, etc. This is actually a great opportunity to bring together academia and industry. And this whole goal is to basically look at cardiovascular diseases, but bring in digitization through medical records and continuum of care, right? Summarization of discharge reports and then use that for continuum of care. There's another very interesting, closely related thing from Koita Center is the National Disease Modeling Consortium, a huge consortium which has lots of medical partners, but there's significant representation from the government to the extent that the health secretary himself is a chair here. So we have been trying to get in industries in this consortium. That's the reason I have a shameless plug for this year. Probably one of the last few case studies. This has to do with a project UDAN, where we built out an end-to-end document translation, OCR and translation, thanks to funding some 10 years back by a well-wisher of ours. It went on, and this was pre-deep learning era. No idea when he invested what would come out. But thankfully, last 2-3 years, we had such big success. We were able to use this to actually digitize lots of text and create translated versions of textbooks with AICT and several state governments. We won a Best Paper Award for this. But the important thing is Bank of Baroda has been using this, and this work also got commercialized through Bharat Bhasha Tech. This is technology license to them. Last one component. So I talked about 4 of the components here. The last one is courses and data subset selection. This is only about compute efficiency. What takes 100 hours, can you compute that in 10 hours? Right? And this is probably the mathematically most complex of all of the components. So I will skip the details. But how can you do robust and efficient supervised learning, semi-supervised learning, hyperparameter optimization, what hyperparameters to pick instead of just doing a grid search or network architecture search. I'm very happy to share that all of these actually have somewhere or the other reflected in industry. While this work on hyperparameter optimization actually got adopted by IBM Research. In fact, we also had use of this for speech recognition. Some of the work has actually been used in Google Research. Hyperparameter network architecture search is actually with Abacus. So abacus.ai in the US. So I'm going to skip this. So this is kind of summary of places, companies, health tech organizations, etc., that led to very interesting problem statements, kept us grounded. We're very grateful to them. At the same time, the due diligence on the academician part is to distill that out and create a common set of repositories so that we are not reinventing the wheel all the time. Thank you.